The wedding hall had emptied, but the phones remained. A dozen strangers still filming, still laughing, still feeding the viral machine. Mariam stayed on her knees, her torn gown spreading around her like broken wings. She couldn't move, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. Suman crouched beside her, close enough that only Mariam could hear the venom in her whisper. "You know what the saddest part is? I actually tried to like you at first, but watching everyone praise you, the foreign girl who tried so hard, it made me sick. You walked around the office like you'd earned something, when really, you were just Beom Soo's charity project." Mariam's head snapped up. "What? Oh, you didn't know." Suman's smile was poisonous. "He only hired you because the company needed to look diverse for that international contract. Everyone knew. Well, we laughed about it during lunch breaks. How you actually believed you got the job on merit." She stood, brushing invisible dust from her designer dress. "I did you a favor, really. Now you can stop pretending you belong here." Ji-Hyun appeared behind Suman, his arms snaking around her waist with practiced possession. "Come on, baby, this is getting boring. Let's go celebrate with the real guests." They left together, followed by the laughing crowd. Someone kicked over the guest book on their way out, scattering carefully written names across the floor. The wedding coordinator stood frozen by the entrance, her face pale with shock, clearly uncertain whether to help or flee. Mariam was alone now, except for the phones. Always the phones, their recording lights blinking red like predator eyes in the growing darkness. And her hands found her clutch purse, white silk embroidered with her initials in gold thread, a gift from her mother. Inside, her phone buzzed incessantly. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. The notifications were endless. Tags, shares, comments pouring in faster than she could process. Her face was everywhere, twisted in anguish, frozen in humiliation, captured from every angle. Someone had created a hashtag #BetBrideMariam. Another, #DesperateGirls of Seoul. One comment made her stomach turn. "This is what happens when you reach above your station. Natural selection at work." She tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The ivory silk tangled around her ankles, mud-stained and ruined, like everything else. The wedding coordinator finally approached, her movements careful, as if Mariam might shatter. "Miss, should I call someone? The police? A friend?" A friend. The word felt like a joke. Suman had been her only real friend in Seoul. The others, co-workers, acquaintances, had always kept a careful distance. She understood why now. "No," Mariam whispered. "I'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. She managed to stumble to her feet, holding the walls for support, and somehow made it outside. The evening air hit her face like a slap. Her phone continued its relentless buzzing. She turned it off with shaking hands and walked. No destination in mind, just away, always away. She didn't see the black Mercedes that had been idling across the street, its engine purring like a patient predator. Didn't see the driver receive a sharp command and pull into traffic, following at a careful distance. Beom Soo arrived at the wedding hall 23 minutes after the video posted. Too late. The venue was nearly empty, just staff cleaning up the aftermath of Mariam's public execution. White chairs stood in perfect rows, mocking the ceremony that never happened. Rose petals littered the floor like evidence of a crime. "Where is she?" His voice was quiet, controlled. Dae-hyun knew that tone. It meant his boss was 3 seconds from violence. The wedding coordinator rushed over, recognition flashing in her eyes. Everyone in Seoul's business circles knew Beom Soo, or at least knew enough to be afraid. "She left on foot. Maybe 15 minutes ago. Sir, I didn't know what to do. Which direction?" The woman pointed with a trembling hand. "Toward Hangang Park. She looked broken." Beom Soo was already moving. Dae-hyun followed, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with their security team. Within minutes, And they had Mariam's location, a bench overlooking the river, her white dress visible even in the fading light. But they also had something else. "Boss," Dae-hyun's voice was tight. "Ji-hyun and the others went to Club Octagon. They're celebrating. Posted about it 20 minutes ago. Successful prank completion with laughing emojis." Beom Soo stopped walking. The tattoo on his neck, a dragon's tail that disappeared beneath his collar, seemed to pulse in the streetlight. He'd gotten it in Busan at 17, after his first real fight, the one that had taught him that violence was sometimes the only language people understood. "Take me there first. Boss Mariam is being tracked. She's safe for now." He turned to Dae-hyun, and the younger man took an involuntary step back. "They're not." Club Octagon was Seoul's playground for the wealthy and reckless. Ji-hyun had reserved a private room, and the celebration was in full swing. Champagne flowed. The video played on loop on a massive screen, each replay generating fresh laughter. "She actually thought you loved her," someone howled, doubled over with laughter. Ji-hyun basked in the attention, Suman draped across his lap like a trophy. The best part was how grateful she always was. "Thank you for being patient with my Korean. Thank you for introducing me to your friends." Like a puppy desperate for scraps. Suman giggled, the sound sharp and cruel. "Remember when I convinced her that her accent was getting worse? She spent weeks practicing, staying late at the office with those pronunciation apps, and I could hear her through the walls." She mimicked Mariam's careful enunciation, exaggerating every syllable. The room erupted. The door opened. The laughter died. Beom Soo stood in the entrance, his presence sucking the air from the room. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. The tattoos on his forearms were fully visible now, intricate patterns that marked him as someone who'd earned his place in Seoul's underworld the hard way. Ji-hyun's face drained of color. "Mr. Beom, stand up." It wasn't a request. Ji-hyun scrambled to his feet, nearly dumping Suman onto the floor. His friends pressed back against the walls, phones forgotten. No one was laughing now. Beom Soo walked forward with deliberate slowness, each step measured. "You humiliated my employee in public, for entertainment. It was just a joke." Ji-hyun's voice cracked. "We didn't mean—" The punch was economical, precise. Beom Soo's fist connected with Ji-hyun's jaw, and the younger man crumpled like paper. Suman screamed. Someone reached for their phone, but Dae-hyun was already there, his hand clamping down on their wrist with crushing force. "I wouldn't," Dae-hyun said pleasantly. "Mr. Beom has a strict no-recording policy." Beom Soo crouched beside Ji-hyun, who was clutching his face, blood seeping between his fingers. Mariam worked for 3 years to save that money, 3 years of early mornings and late nights, and you stole it. For a car. I'll pay it back." "You will, with interest." Beom Soo stood, brushing invisible dust from his hands. "But money isn't enough. You wanted to destroy her reputation, her dignity, on her future in this city." He turned to address the room, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "So I'm going to destroy yours." Suman found her voice, though it shook. "You can't do that. You're just her boss. You have no right." "I have every right." Beom Soo's smile was terrifying in its coldness. "Because in this city, I decide who rises and who falls, and you've both just fallen." He walked out, Dae-hyun falling into step beside him. Behind them, Ji-hyun's friends helped him to his feet, their celebration turned to ashes. In the car, Beom Soo's hands were steady as he pulled out his phone. "Call Min-jun. Tell him I need that information on Ji-hyun and Suman by morning. Everything. Financial records, employment history, every skeleton in every closet." "Already done, boss." And he started digging the moment he saw the video. Beom Soo nodded once, approval flickering in his eyes. "And Mariam?" Still at the river. Teams watching from a distance. She hasn't moved. Take me to her. Mariam sat on the bench, her ruined wedding dress pooling around her like a shroud. The Han River stretched before her, dark and infinite. Seoul's lights reflected on the water, beautiful and unreachable, like everything else in this city. Her phone was still off. She couldn't face it. Couldn't face the comments, the mockery, the proof that Ji Hyun had been right. She'd never belonged here. Every small victory, the job, the apartment, the carefully built life, had been an illusion. A house of cards waiting for someone cruel enough to blow it down. The sound of footsteps made her tense, but she didn't turn around. And if it was more cameras, let them film. She had nothing left to lose. Mariam. That voice. Deep, calm, impossibly familiar. She turned, and there was Beom Soo, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. Behind him, Dae Hyun waited at a respectful distance. "Mr. Beom?" Her voice was hoarse from crying. "What are you—" "I saw the video." He sat beside her on the bench, not asking permission, his presence solid and grounding. "I'm sorry I wasn't there sooner." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "You shouldn't be here. Everyone saw—" She couldn't finish, couldn't articulate the shame that was drowning her. "Everyone saw you being victimized by cruel people. That's not your shame to carry. They made me look so stupid, so desperate." The words tumbled out, into 3 years of insecurity finally breaking free. And maybe I was. Maybe Suman was right. Maybe I never belonged at the company and you only hired me for— "Stop!" The command in his voice made her freeze. "I hired you because when I asked you in the interview what your greatest weakness was, you said, 'I'm still learning to forgive myself for not being perfect.' You were the only candidate honest enough to give a real answer instead of a rehearsed one." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. "And in 3 years, you've proven yourself to be the most competent, most reliable person in that office, not despite being foreign, not because I felt charitable, because you're exceptional at what you do." She stared at him, unable to process his words through the fog of devastation. Ji Hyun is a coward who needed to destroy someone good to feel powerful, Beom Soo continued, his voice hard now. And Suman is a bitter woman who couldn't stand watching someone succeed through actual merit. Their cruelty says everything about them and nothing about you. But the money will be returned, with interest. I promise you that. Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. His knuckles were bruised, she noticed. Fresh bruises. "What did you do?" "What I should have done the moment I suspected Ji Hyun was unworthy of you." He met her eyes, and she saw something there she'd never seen before, something raw and unguarded. "I broke his jaw." She should have been shocked, should have been horrified. Instead, she felt a fierce, unexpected satisfaction. You hit him? For me? For you." He said it simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And that's just the beginning." A car pulled up, not Dae Hyun's Mercedes, but a different one. Sleek, black, armor-plated. A driver emerged and opened the back door, waiting. "Come with me," Beom Soo said, standing and offering his hand. "You can't go back to your apartment. By now they'll have posted your address. There will be reporters, curiosity seekers, worse." "Where would I go?" "My home. You'll be safe there." She looked at his outstretched hand, calloused and strong, the hand of a man who'd built himself from nothing into something formidable. 3 years she'd worked for him, 3 years of carefully maintained professional distance, and now he was offering her sanctuary. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" For a long moment he didn't answer, and then, "Because 3 years ago I hired someone I thought I could keep at arm's length, someone I could admire professionally without getting involved. His jaw tightened. I was wrong, and tonight, watching you break, I realized that professional distance was just cowardice, dressed up as propriety. She took his hand. His grip was steady, warm, anchoring her to something solid when everything else had dissolved into chaos. Beom Soo's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Gangnam, 40 floors above the city, above the noise, above the cruelty. The elevator required a biometric scan to access the floor. As the doors opened, Mariam stepped into a space that felt more like an art gallery than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul's glittering sprawl. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, chosen with precision. But there were unexpected touches, too. A wall of books in Korean and English, a collection of jade sculptures, a corner dedicated to what looked like martial arts equipment. "The guest room is prepared," Baam Su said, his professional tone returning now that they were here. "Bathroom attached. There's clothing in the closet, my sister's. She keeps things here for when she visits." Mariam nodded, not trusting her voice. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Mariam." He waited until she met his eyes. "You're safe here. No one can reach this floor without my permission. Sleep. Tomorrow we'll begin fixing this." "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "It's everywhere. Everyone saw." "Then everyone will see something else. I promise you." He gestured toward the guest room. "Rest now. Or we'll talk in the morning." She walked to the room on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The space was beautiful. Neutral tones, a bed that looked like a cloud, a bathroom larger than her old bedroom in Lagos. Someone had already laid out pajamas, toiletries, everything she might need. She stood under the shower for 30 minutes, watching the water turn gray with the wedding's destruction. Mud, makeup, the ruins of her careful planning. When she finally emerged, her skin raw and pink, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. The same face she'd always had, but the woman behind it felt irreversibly changed. She collapsed onto the bed, certain she'd never sleep. But exhaustion pulled her under like a dark tide, and for a few hours at least, there were no phones, no laughter, no betrayal, just blessed, dreamless nothing. Morning arrived with cruel sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For 3 beautiful seconds, Mariam forgot. Then memory crashed back in, and with it, the full weight of her new reality. Her phone, still off from last night, sat on the nightstand like a bomb. She stared at it, knowing she'd have to face it eventually, but unable to find the courage. A soft knock on the door. "Mariam? Are you awake?" Beom Soo's voice. She pulled on a robe and opened the door. He stood there, dressed casually in dark jeans and a fitted black t-shirt. She'd never seen him in anything but immaculate suits. The change was startling. He looked younger, more dangerous, the tattoos on his arms fully visible now. "I made breakfast," he said, or tried to. "Fair warning, I'm better at negotiation than cooking." She followed him to the kitchen, where the table held a spread of food, some dishes clearly catered, others showing signs of amateur effort. The gesture touched something deep in her chest. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Beom Soo set down his chopsticks and pulled out a tablet. "Min Jun sent his report. I need to show you something." He opened a file, and Mariam found herself looking at financial records. Her financial records. "How did you—" "I have resources." He scrolled to a series of transactions. "Here, March 13th. You transferred $50,000 to an account Ji Hyun claimed was for a joint investment opportunity, a restaurant franchise he told you." She remembered. The conversation over dinner, Ji Hyun's enthusiasm, his detailed business plan that had seemed so promising, when the money never went to any business investment. Beom Soo pulled up another screen, a purchase receipt. He bought a Mercedes-Benz GLC the next day, paid in full, cash. The evidence was there, undeniable. Her life savings converted into a luxury car she'd never known existed. There's more. He opened another file. Suman's work computer. Min Jun accessed her email history. She's been sabotaging you for 2 years. Email after email appeared on screen. Messages to clients suggesting Mariam's work was subpar. Reports to management claiming mistakes Mariam hadn't made. Deliberate scheduling conflicts designed to make Mariam miss important meetings. And running through it all, comments to coworkers that made Mariam's blood run cold. Let's see how long the diversity hire lasts. Maybe if we make things difficult enough, or she'll go back where she belongs. Beom Soo's African experiment is getting old. Mariam felt sick. 2 years. She's been doing this for 2 years. While pretending to be your friend, while collecting information to help Ji-hyun manipulate you more effectively. Beom Soo's voice was ice. The wedding wasn't just cruelty, it was strategic. They wanted to destroy you completely, make sure you'd leave Seoul broken enough that you'd never recover. Why? The question came out broken. What did I ever do to them? You existed. You succeeded. For people like them, that's enough. He closed the tablet, his jaw tight with controlled rage. But they made a mistake. They thought you were alone. They thought no one would care enough to fight back. He looked at her then, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. They were wrong. Dae-hyun entered the penthouse, carrying additional files. "Boss, the information you requested." "Show her." Dae-hyun opened the first file on the table. Ji-hyun has 3 outstanding loans. Total debt, 200 million won. The bank was willing to give him time because his father co-signed, but if someone were to call in those loans immediately... He left the sentence hanging. The second file. Suman's apartment. She's renting, lease up for renewal next month. The building's owner happens to be one of the boss's business associates. The third file. Ji-hyun's job at his father's company. Turns out his performance reviews are manufactured. He's been protected by nepotism. If someone were to present evidence of, say, fraud or theft, Mariam looked between them, understanding dawning. You're going to destroy them. No, Beom Soo corrected quietly. We're going to let them destroy themselves. I'm simply going to remove the safety nets that have been protecting them from the consequences of their actions. He pulled out his phone, making the first call while Mariam watched. The conversation was brief, conducted in Korean too rapid for her to follow completely. When he hung up, his expression was satisfied. Ji-hyun's loans, called in. Payment due in full within 30 days. Second call, another brief conversation. Suman's lease, not being renewed. She has 60 days to vacate. Third call, longer this time. When he finished, he looked at Mariam. Ji-hyun's father just received an anonymous package. Financial records proving his son stole $50,000 from an employee. Photos of the Mercedes purchased with stolen money. And a gentle reminder that international fraud carries serious legal penalties. Is this legal? Mariam asked, though part of her didn't care. The information gathering exists in a gray area. The consequences. Beom Soo's smile was sharp. Entirely legal. I'm not fabricating anything. I'm simply ensuring that their actions have appropriate responses. Dae-hyun made additional calls, coordinating with various contacts. Within an hour, the web was woven. Ji-hyun's loans called in. Suman's lease terminated. Whispers spreading through Seoul's business community about fraud, about cruelty, about 2 people who'd made powerful enemies. What about the video? Mariam asked quietly. It's still everywhere. Min Jun is handling that. Beom Soo pulled up another screen. Though we can't delete it, the internet doesn't work that way, but we can change the narrative. He showed her a prepared statement, drafted by what was clearly a professional PR team. Yesterday, Nigerian-Korean business professional Mariam was publicly humiliated by her former fiancé as part of a year-long bet. The perpetrators filmed and distributed her trauma for entertainment. This behavior is unacceptable. We stand with Miss Okonkwo and call for accountability. By this afternoon, this statement will be posted by 15 major business leaders in Seoul, including me. He scrolled down. We've also contacted several news outlets. They'll be running stories about the rise in targeted harassment against foreign professionals in Korea. Mariam, they wanted to make you a cautionary tale. Instead, you're going to become a symbol of resilience. She stared at him, overwhelmed. Why are you doing all this? The company, the PR, the revenge, it's so much more than an employer would do. Baam Su was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured, as if he were choosing each word with precision. 3 years ago, you walked into my office for an interview. You were nervous, your Korean wasn't perfect. But when I asked you why you wanted to work for us, you said, "Because I believe in second chances. Your company rehabilitates struggling businesses. I'm trying to rehabilitate my own life." That honesty stayed with me. He stood, walking to the window, his back to her. I watched you work. Watched you handle every microaggression with grace. Watched you stay late, arrive early, never complain. I watched you make that office better just by being in it. And I watched Ji-hyun circle you like a predator, and I said nothing because I thought... He paused. Because I told myself it wasn't my place, that you were an adult making your own choices. He turned back to face her. I was wrong, and last night watching you break, I realized something. Professional distance wasn't professionalism. It was cowardice. Because the truth is, Mariam, I haven't been just your boss for a very long time. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Mariam's heart pounded. What are you saying? I'm saying that revenge isn't just business to me, it's personal, because 3 years is a long time to pretend you don't care about someone. His eyes met hers, and she saw everything he'd been hiding, the careful distance, the professional courtesy, with the walls he'd built around himself. And I'm done pretending. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and a grim smile crossed his face. It's starting. Ji-hyun's father just fired him, publicly. Mariam's phone, which she'd finally, reluctantly turned on, began buzzing too. Messages from former co-workers, news articles. The narrative was shifting, just as Beom Soo had promised, but she couldn't focus on any of it. All she could think about was the man standing before her, the dangerous, powerful man who'd just admitted he'd been watching her for 3 years, not as a boss, as something else entirely. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, not yet. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the most visceral way. Right now, we finish what they started. So we make sure they understand that some people shouldn't be crossed. His phone rang again. This time, when he answered, his smile was pure satisfaction. Yes, perfect. Send me the photos. He showed Mariam the screen. Photos of Suman standing outside her apartment building with boxes, clearly being evicted. Another of Ji-hyun at a police station. Someone had filed charges for fraud. It's only been 6 hours, Mariam breathed. I'm efficient. Beom Soo's voice carried dark amusement. And in this city, when I make a call, things happen quickly. The systematic destruction had begun, and somewhere in Seoul, Ji-hyun and Suman were learning what it meant to cross someone under Beom Soo's protection. Someone who, it turned out, he'd been protecting with more than just professional courtesy for 3 long years. Welcome back, my amazing viewers. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. 3 days passed in Beom Soo's penthouse sanctuary. 3 days of watching the consequences unfold from 40 floors above the chaos. Ji-Hyun's social media went dark after the fraud charges. Suman's carefully curated Instagram, once full of designer bags and restaurant check-ins, deleted entirely. Mariam should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow. She found Beom Soo in his study late one evening, surrounded by papers. But these weren't contracts or financial reports. They were books, slim volumes with worn spines, pages marked with careful annotations. "Poetry?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, startled. For a moment, she saw something vulnerable cross his face before the mask returned. Old habit. From before. Before what? He hesitated, then gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Before I became this." He indicated the expensive study, the city view, the empire he'd built. "I grew up in Busan, Gamcheon Village. You know it?" She shook her head. "It's beautiful now. Colorful houses, tourist attraction. When I was young, it was different. Poverty wrapped in pretty paint." He picked up one of the books, his calloused fingers gentle on the pages. "My mother worked 3 jobs. My father left when I was 7. Poetry was free. The library didn't care if your clothes were secondhand." Mariam sat watching him transform before her eyes, the dangerous businessman dissolving into someone softer, younger, carrying old wounds. "I got into fights," he continued quietly. "A lot of fights. Defending my mother's honor, defending myself, defending the idea that we deserved better. By 15, I had a reputation. By 17, I had this." He touched the tattoo on his neck. "And connections to people who saw potential in a boy with quick fists and quicker thinking." "The underworld," Mariam said. "Gray zones. I never dealt drugs, never hurt innocents. But I learned how power works in this city. Learned that sometimes violence is the only language certain people understand." He set down the book. "I built my business legally, but those old connections never really disappear. They're tools I keep in case I need them." Like now. Like now. His eyes met hers. "The poetry kept me human through it all. Reminded me that strength and gentleness aren't opposites. That a man can break someone's jaw and still cry over beautiful words." She reached across the desk, her hand covering his. "Thank you for showing me this." "You should know who you're trusting," he said. "I'm not a good man, Mariam. I'm a man who does what's necessary. Sometimes that looks like goodness. Sometimes it doesn't." "You're good to me," she whispered. "That's enough." The letter arrived 4 days later, delivered by courier to the penthouse. Mariam recognized Suman's handwriting on the envelope immediately, the careful loops, the expensive stationery that now felt like mockery. She opened it with Beom Soo watching from across the room, ready to intervene if needed. "Mariam, I know you probably hate me. You should. What I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand. I was jealous. Watching you succeed, watching Beom Soo value you, watching everyone praise your work while I was just the pretty one in the office. It made me cruel. Ji-Hyun and I are finished. He blamed me for everything when the charges came. My parents won't speak to me. I've lost my apartment, my job, everything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for understanding. We were friends once. Real friends. Before I poisoned it with my insecurity. Can we talk? Just once? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Suman Mariam read it twice. Felt the familiar pull of guilt, of wanting to make things better, of her mother's voice in her head saying, "Forgiveness is strength, daughter." But her mother had never been humiliated in front of millions, had never had her trust weaponized so completely. She walked to the fireplace, decorative but functional. Beom Soo kept it lit during Seoul's cold nights. She held the letter over the flames, watching the expensive paper catch and curl. "Mariam," Beom Soo said carefully, "you don't have to." "Yes, I do." The letter blackened, Suman's words disappearing into ash. "She wants absolution, wants me to make her feel better about destroying me. But her peace isn't my responsibility anymore." She watched the last of it burn, feeling something shift inside her chest. Not closure exactly, but choice. The choice to prioritize her own healing over Suman's guilt. "I spent 3 years trying to make people comfortable with my presence," she continued, still staring at the flames, "apologizing for my accent, my foreignness, my very existence. I'm done. Suman doesn't get my forgiveness. She gets my absence. That's more than she gave me." Beom Soo moved beside her, his presence solid and grounding. "Your peace matters more than her redemption." "Exactly." She turned to face him. "Thank you for helping me understand that." That night, unable to sleep, Mariam found Beom Soo in his library, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring out at Seoul's glittering sprawl. "Can I ask you something?" she said from the doorway. "Anything. Why did you really stay away? For 3 years you kept that distance. If you felt what you say you felt, why didn't you say something sooner?" He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, "Because you smiled at Ji-hyun the way I wished you'd smile at me." The confession hung in the air between them. "I watched you fall for him," Beom Soo continued, his voice rough. "No, watched you light up when he texted. Watched you plan a future with someone I knew, instinctively knew, wasn't worthy of you. But you seemed happy. And I thought—" He laughed bitterly. "I thought that keeping my distance was the right thing, the professional thing, the thing a good man would do." "You thought I was happy, so you stayed silent." "Yes, and then I watched that video and I realized you weren't happy. You were just trying to be, trying to build something with someone who was using you for entertainment." He turned to face her fully. "I can't fix my cowardice. Can't take back 3 years of pretending I didn't notice every time you walked into a room. But I can be honest now. Finally." Mariam moved closer, her heart racing. "Oh, what are you being honest about?" "That I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since your first interview. That every time you stayed late, I found excuses to stay later. That watching you hurt was the worst thing I've experienced, and I've experienced considerable violence." His hands clenched at his sides. "That I'm standing here, in my own home, terrified you'll reject me, because I don't deserve you any more than Ji-hyun did." "That's not true, isn't it? I'm a man with blood on his hands, Mariam. Metaphorical blood, but blood nonetheless. I've ruined people. I'll ruin more. That's who I am." She closed the distance between them, her hand finding his scarred jaw. "You're also a man who reads poetry, who built an empire from nothing, who broke someone's jaw because they hurt me. Who gave me sanctuary when I had nowhere else to go? Those don't cancel each other out." "No," she agreed. "They make you complex, human, real." She met his eyes. "I don't want a perfect man, Beom Soo. I've had enough of performances and pretty lies. I want someone real, someone who sees me, really sees me, and chooses to stay." "I see you," he whispered. "I've always seen you." "Then stop hiding." She pulled his hand to her cheek, holding it there. "I'm tired of both of us hiding." He kissed her then, not gentle, not tentative, but with 3 years of restrained longing finally breaking free. She kissed him back, tasting whiskey and promises, feeling safe for the first time since the wedding disaster. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I want to give you everything. And everything they tried to take." "I don't want everything," she said. Just you. Just this. Just the chance to build something real. Then that's what we'll build. 6 months later, the Second Chances Foundation opened in a renovated building in Itaewon. The location was deliberate. Seoul's most international neighborhood, where diversity wasn't remarkable, but expected. Mariam stood at the entrance, watching people arrive for the launch event. Foreign professionals who'd faced discrimination, Korean citizens who'd been discarded by an unforgiving system, anyone who'd been told they didn't belong and refused to accept that verdict. "Nervous?" Beom Soo asked, appearing beside her in an immaculate charcoal suit. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if no one comes? What if this doesn't work?" "Look around." He gestured to the growing crowd. "Well, it's already working." The foundation offered legal aid, job placement, counseling, all the support Mariam wished she'd had during her darkest moments. They'd funded it jointly, Beom Soo's resources combined with Mariam's passion and understanding of what people needed. During her speech, Mariam looked out at the assembled crowd and saw herself reflected back, people who'd been broken and were choosing to rebuild. 6 months ago, I was humiliated publicly, made into a joke for millions to share. I thought my life in Seoul was over, but someone showed me that endings can be beginnings, that the people who try to destroy you don't get the final word. You do. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, person after person approached her with their own stories of betrayal, discrimination, survival. She listened to each one, and Baam Su, a steady presence at her side. "This matters," she told him later when the crowd had thinned. "This work, it's what I was supposed to be doing all along." "You're extraordinary," he said simply. "I hope you're finally starting to believe that." She was. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. She was beginning to see herself the way he saw her. Not as someone lucky to be tolerated, but as someone with inherent worth. The wedding took place 1 year after the disaster, in the same hall where Mariam's world had shattered. The choice was deliberate, reclaiming the space with something beautiful. The fusion was perfect. Traditional Korean hanbok in deep crimson for Beom Soo, Ankara prints in brilliant gold and emerald for Mariam's gown. Her mother had flown from Lagos, weeping openly at her daughter's joy. Beom Soo's mother sat beside her, or the two women bonding over their children's unlikely love story. No phones were allowed, no recording. This moment belonged only to them and the people who genuinely loved them. As Mariam walked down the aisle, her father's photo pinned to her bouquet, her sister as maid of honor, she saw Beom Soo waiting beneath the same floral arch where Ji Hyun had destroyed her. But this time, the man standing there looked at her like she was everything. Not a bet, not a joke, everything. The vows were personal, written together during late nights in the penthouse. Beom Soo promised to always see her, to never let her doubt her worth, to build a life where she was celebrated, not tolerated. Mariam promised to challenge him, to keep him human, to remind him that strength and gentleness could coexist. "How I spent 3 years loving you quietly," Beom Soo said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I plan to spend the rest of my life loving you loudly." When they kissed, the hall erupted. Not in mockery this time, but in genuine celebration. The reception blended both cultures, Korean dishes alongside Nigerian jollof rice, traditional music mixing with Afrobeat. Mariam danced with her mother, with her sister, with Dae Hyun, who'd become an unexpected friend. But her favorite moment came late in the evening when Beom Soo pulled her into a quiet corner of the garden, away from the celebration. "I have something for you." He handed her a slim volume, old, worn, obviously precious. She opened it carefully. Poetry, in Korean and English. His annotations filled the margins, and tucked inside the front cover was a photograph. Her, not from 3 years ago, laughing at something during a company dinner. She hadn't known he'd taken it. "You kept this?" "I kept everything. Every moment I could steal without you knowing." He touched her face gently. "I told myself it was wrong, that I should delete them, forget them, maintain distance, but I couldn't. You were the bright spot in every day, and I was too selfish to let that go completely." Mariam felt tears prick her eyes, not sad tears this time, but ones of overwhelming gratitude. 3 years we wasted. "Not wasted, necessary." He kissed her forehead. "You needed to learn your own strength. I needed to learn that hiding wasn't noble, just cowardly. We both needed to break before we could build something real. And now we build. Together. Loudly." He smiled, the genuine smile he reserved only for her, and the one that transformed his dangerous features into something achingly vulnerable. "Now we show Seoul what happens when you try to destroy someone under my protection." "Our protection," she corrected. "The foundation is ours." "Everything is ours," he agreed. "My empire, your vision, our future, equal partners." Music drifted from the hall, a fusion of cultures like everything else tonight. Mariam pulled him close, swaying to the rhythm under Seoul's stars. A year ago, she'd been on her knees in a torn dress, broken and humiliated. Tonight she stood in a fusion gown, married to a man who'd systematically dismantled her enemies before building her an empire of second chances. The video still existed somewhere in the internet's infinite archive. But now when people searched her name, they found something else. The foundation. Or the wedding. The story of a woman who'd refused to stay broken. Ji Hyun was working a menial job in Busan, his reputation destroyed, his privileges revoked. Suman had left Seoul entirely, unable to find work after being blacklisted from every major company. Mariam didn't celebrate their downfall anymore. She simply didn't think about them at all. They'd taken up enough space in her life. "What are you thinking?" Beom Soo asked, feeling her tense slightly in his arms. "That I'm grateful for the betrayal even, because it brought me here, to this, to us." "Careful," he murmured against her hair. "You're starting to sound like those poetry books I keep forcing on you." She laughed, genuine, unguarded, free. "Maybe you're rubbing off on me." "Good. I plan to keep rubbing off on you for the next several decades." From the hall, someone called their names. Time to cut the cake, to make more toasts, to celebrate with the people who'd stood by them. But first, Mariam pulled Beom Soo into one more kiss. This one slower, deeper. A promise of everything to come. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, she saw their future reflected in his eyes. Not perfect, but real. Built on honesty, strength, and the kind of love that didn't need to hide behind professional distance or pretty lies. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. She took it without hesitation. "Ready." Together, they walked back into the celebration. Equal partners, each other's sanctuary, proof that sometimes the cruelest betrayals lead to the most unexpected grace.